since 1983, we're beginning a new series of films, this being a historical documentary of the Askins family. Daddy, your children, Tom Jr., the cameraman, Deanna, in absentia, and I would want to know just what made you and your family move to Fernandina Beach, Florida, a once tiny little fishing village.
We're your videotaping.
As, of course, all of y'all know, I was born in Fayetteville, Tennessee, Lincoln County, some 3 or 4 miles outside of Fayetteville, Tennessee, on February the 10th, 1914. And in 1923, my mama's cousin, Ewan Forbes, came to Fayetteville and talked to Papa, Joseph Manley Askins, into buying some stock in an aluminum screen factory here in Fernandina Beach. At that time, Papa owned a huge grocery store, which today would be comparable to a small supermarket. Plus, he had
I got a picture, didn't I?
a leather factory where they manufactured saddles and other leather products for farmers, and also had a creamery where they bought cream from the farmers there in Lincoln County for the Borden Company. Papa bought stock in an aluminum screen factory from Ewan Forbes. As I said, my mother's must have been second cousin. And we moved to Fernandina on somewhere around the 1st of February of the last day of January in 1924. And my first stop on Amelia Island in Fernandina was at the Albemarle Hotel. And I think now we should go down there to the site of the Albemarle, as it was torn down somewhere in 1966 or 68, there or about. And at that time, we'll try to give y'all the story of the Albemarle Hotel.
Okay, well, let's
honey?
take a walking tour down to the old Albemarle site.
Okay, so here we are at the site back of us where I first put my feet on the soil of Florida from Fayetteville, Tennessee, at old Lincoln County. And it was at the Albemarle Hotel, and the Albemarle Hotel was on this piece of property between the Stiles home and the Brown home. I'm sorry, it was the Johnsons. And in there was a 2-story building with a 3rd story of dormer windows. And the Albemarle Hotel was operated by the Burney sisters and Mrs. Brown. It was a wooden structure building built very similar to the old Stiles home here to your left. And as I told you down there a while ago, that Papa bought stock in an aluminum screen factory from my mother's cousin, Ewan Forbes. And we moved here, Robert, my next oldest brother, and Papa and myself. We came down in an automobile at that time that was called a Star. And it took us 3 days to make our trip here. And the first place that I stepped on the Amelia Island was across the street here at the Albemarle Hotel. It was a wooden structure building, 2-story, but it appeared to be a 3-story because upstairs was dormer windows. And it was operated by 2 sisters, the Burney sisters, and assisted by Mrs. Brown. And Papa, Robert, and myself stayed in the Albemarle Hotel for a week before Mama, Nancy, and Sayer moved here. And the Albemarle was torn down back in 1966 or 67. And from one of the room doors, this ceramic number was given to me. John Page demolished the building and salvaged it, and I was able to obtain this door number. It's ceramic 14. Certainly I do not remember which room we stayed in, but it was a beautiful old building. And Mr. Parks from Fayetteville, Tennessee was also here with this development. And Mr. Parks used to get up early in the morning to build a fire because they used pine knots to start the fire, and it was so easy. And in Tennessee, all of the wood was a hardwood, and it was real difficult to get a fire started. So Mr. Parks would get up early in the morning and start the fire in the fireplace. And my first morning that I had breakfast here in this hotel, I noticed we got some white stuff in a little dish. I saw some people putting excuse me, some eggs on it. I saw some putting butter on it, and I saw some putting gravy on it. And I was wondering what it was. And come to find out that it was grits. And of course in Tennessee, we didn't have grits in Tennessee. And neither did we put gravy on rice like we do now. Our gravy was put on potatoes. And the biggest shock that I had was early in the morning, I heard a church bell ringing, which right across the street from us is the, and I thought to myself, I said, well, today's not Sunday, because I was, and looked out the window and saw these women dressed in black and with a white hood. And I was at a loss as to what it was and what they were doing. Later on, I found out that they were Catholic sisters, which was an education to me as a young boy, not quite 10. Well, we lived here at the Albemarle, Papa and Robert, for probably a week, a little over a week. And at which time, Mama, Nancy, and Sayer came down to the Catholic Church, the St. Joseph Church. By train. And we moved on, had rented a house from Mrs. Nolan on South 7th Street.
Well, Daddy, let's just walk on over to the Nolan house and see the second place that y'all stayed in once you hit Fernandina Beach.
Okay.
Come on, Tommy. Let's walk on over to the Nolan house.
All right. Casey was down these railroad tracks in 1924, sometime the 1st of February that our furniture came to Fernandina in a boxcar, similar to the one that where Tom is now shooting, and was parked right along in here. And our furniture was moved from here, from a boxcar, by a colored gentleman by the name of Charlie Scipio. And his transportation was not a truck, but it was a horse and wagon. And a northeaster was blowing. And I mean, it was a nasty day. But Charlie Scipio brought our furniture from down here up to South 7th Street, which was the Nolan house that we had rented. And so let's go up there, walk up there and take a look at the Nolan house.
Okay.
Actually, the first house that Mama and Papa and Robert and Sayer and Nancy that we lived in Fernandina.
Okay.
Is our first home in Fernandina Beach.
Mm-hmm.
This is the Nolan's house. Papa had rented it from Mrs. R.V. Nolan. And as we just walked from the railroad station where Charlie Scipio, the colored fella, in a one-horse wagon brought our furniture here on a northeaster. And of course you are familiar with the northeaster. Windy, nasty. And the time we moved here, I would say was sometime, give or take a few days, February 1st or 2nd, 1924. And it was here that I celebrated my 10th birthday. And also, in this house is where I was living when I had typhoid fever. And that was back a long time ago, before they had your antibiotics and etc., the AIDS. And my doctor was Dr. Humphreys. And Dr. Humphreys, I was sick for about 60 days here. And Dr. Humphreys was by anywhere from 1 to 3 times a day. And on the day that I had the crisis, which is the critical day of an illness of that type, Dr. Humphreys called in a doctor from Jacksonville. And he flew in, and they picked him up he landed at the beach, and they brought him here, and I can clearly remember him punching me in the belly and turning me over and saying, well, that's it. And when he said that was it, I decided that I wasn't ready to go anywhere at that young age, so I decided to stay here. So Dr. Humphreys kept on, and thank goodness, after about 60 days of illness right here in this house, I recovered from typhoid fever. One medicine that Dr. Humphreys prescribed for me was a spoonful of whiskey each morning at about 5 o'clock in the morning. And Mr. Gantz was our milkman, and about that time of the morning is when he delivered the milk and set it on the front porch. And I always dreaded to hear that bottle of milk set down on the porch, because I had to take a spoonful of whiskey. And that whiskey at the time, of course, it was during Prohibition, and Mr. Lassier, Charles Lassier, who was our Ford dealer, he had a bottle or two, and he let Papa have some. And of course the house was under quarantine, And the only person that came here to see me was Ms. Nolan, our landlord. And her husband was manager of the Fernandina ice plant and electric plant, which at that time was located on South 10th Street. And Mrs. Nolan practically every day would come in to see me. And she's a little tiny, dried up thing, and I will always remember her. And she would bring some fresh eggs in a shoebox practically every day. Well, as I told you, Papa had bought stock in this aluminum screen factory, which was a farce, really. It was Uncle, my mother's cousin. He was strictly a promoter, and it was more of a flim-flam deal. But to show you how far ahead of his times was, he had a sample of aluminum screen that you put in your windows, and it was all made in one piece. And his selling point was his factory out on South 8th Street, which was actually an old railroad building where they repaired railroads in Fernandina. Fernandina used to be, at that time, a great shipping center plus a rail center, as we have the deepest harbor on the East Coast. It's a natural harbor. Excuse me. And so Papa had lost, he was broke, to put it point blank. He'd lost everything. Well, during my illness, they had to give me a bath and rubbing alcohol every day, which took about a pint of alcohol, and to cool me off, to try to cool the temperature down. And in desperation, all these pint bottles was on the back porch, and Papa decided, he said, well, he'd start bootlegging. And of course, Mama being a redhead, and just about Casey's size, she hit the ceiling. Well, that put that venture to an end. And Papa being a farmer, the next thing, the only other thing that we had here of an industry that he could make a dollar out of was the shrimping industry. And of course, Papa knew nothing whatsoever about being on a shrimp boat, because the biggest creek that he was ever on was up in Tennessee, which was Elk River, under Stone Bridge there, which Stone Bridge crossed, and where they would do a little bit of fishing. So he gave that up. And then his next adventure was, Papa had been in the insurance business in Tennessee with the Jefferson Insurance Company. So he got his insurance license and started selling insurance. And this was in 1935, I would say. After I recovered from typhoid, we lived here probably a year later, which, a while ago I said 35, and I meant to say 1925. We moved. Papa bought a house here on the corner where the Badcock Furniture Store is now. And it was a huge building. It practically covered the whole lot. It was more or less of a duplex. It was a two-story building, very similar to this building here, plus it was probably twice as large as that building there that you see now.
I'm really enjoying this. This is so neat. I'm so glad we're doing this. I just wish Deanna and her children were here with us.
I do too.
Maybe we can go into the next place that you live, which would be where? After the house in the corner.
After the house here on the corner, we moved on Atlantic Avenue and 13th Street.
Hey, we'll go on out there now and take a look at that.
Okay. Where Badcock Home Furnishing Center is now was our second home in Fernandina. It was two apartments in it. It practically covered the whole lot. And the little house next to Badcock's, which is 708 Center Street, is where Ewan Forbes had his office. As I was told you earlier in the film, that was Mama's cousin that talked Papa into coming to Fernandina and buying stock in the aluminum screen factory. And we lived there for about 2 years. And across the street at the Bamboo House, where the Bamboo House is located now, there was a Gulf filling station there. And where you see that light fixture, was a huge oak tree. And under that tree, was my first adventure in business in Fernandina. I had a Coca-Cola stand there. The Coca-Cola stand consisted of a barrel that you ice Coca-Colas down, and I sold cold drinks there. And next to the Bamboo House was the Ritz Theater, which was next to the Joe Rue's filling station, the Gulf filling station. And back of you, where now the First Federal Saving and Loan is located, was the Keystone Hotel. And Ewan Forbes, being a promoter that he was, he leased the entire floor. The Keystone Hotel was a 2-story building, and he had that to entertain people that he was selling stock in his aluminum screen factory. And from here, we moved to 13th and Atlantic Avenue. Casey, you been wanting to know about all the places that I lived in. And here we are at the corner of Atlantic and 13th Street, which today is known as the Smith House. This was the third house that we kids, Mama and Papa, that we lived in. And at that time, it was owned by Mr. D.A. Parton, and is a house where this woman that worked for your grandmother, little house back down there, is next door, almost next door neighbor. And
neighbor.
Well, anyway, this was our third home in Fernandina. Papa and Mama and Nancy and Sarah and I went back to Tennessee to visit. We left Robert and Miller here at this same place, and they started making some home brew the minute that we left town.
Your mother wasn't here, right?
That's right, Mama wasn't, because we were all gone.
Oh, God.
And they were in a hurry for the home brew because they knew that we'd only be gone so long up to Tennessee to visit relatives up there. And one night the home brew started, they bottled it up, and they bottled it too soon, and it started to sound like shotguns. It scared Robert and Miller. They thought somebody was had a shotgun on them and shooting. And from here, Papa bought a place on South 7th Street, which we will visit and show you what he did there.
Okay.
He not only bought one house, he bought 4 houses on South 7th.
In a row?
In a row.
Very good.
What I'll do.
Okay, here we are at South 7th Street, the next home that the Askins lived in. Note the tiny palm trees. In a few minutes, we're going to go to the actual site, this, of course, being a picture, and you'll see how tall the palm trees have grown. This picture was taken about 1928, and we see Papa standing by.
Rented this place. Papa rented from it. And back of it,
His Model A or Model T, whatever it is. Whoops.
Okay, you ready to go? We'll go on down to South.
it was around 1928 that Papa and Mama moved down here on the corner of Elm and 7th Street from the home that was renting on Atlantic Avenue from Mr. D.A. Park. Papa bought these 4 houses here, and at the time there was a shell road here. And when Papa moved down here, when we moved here, Papa got the city to pave. The pavement stopped here, and he got them to pave this next block. And Lloyd Jones, who lived down the street, across the street, got mad with Papa about it because Lloyd had to pay a third of it. The city paid a third, and people across the street paid a third. And Lloyd Jones wouldn't speak to Papa from then on out. And when we moved here, Papa bought these houses. Of course, the first thing they always did was paint and fix things up. And Robert is more familiar with the planting of the palm trees over there. And I'd like for Robert to tell you about how the palm trees were brought in and how they planted them.
During the time that we lived here, Papa was elected to the Board of County Commissioners, and at that time they wanted to beautify Atlantic Avenue to the beach, and he found where he could get this type of palm for $1 a piece. And he bought enough to plant all the way to the beach with the oleanders, and I planted them, got 25 cents a piece for it. And then everybody in town got to the place they wanted some. So the ones in front of the house over there, I put those out, and all of them up and down 7th Street here and quite a few other streets. And the first time Papa caught me with smoking was right up here where I was planting one. And I was down on my knees putting the dirt around it and looked up Papa was standing over my back.
Well, isn't it true that those all the palms over there, he brought them back in the trunk of his car? They were little tiny palms.
Oh yeah, they were real small, about I'd say 1.5 foot, 2 foot at the most.
Tom, did you get a picture of those palms? Back to the palm trees, you're getting the height of them.
Yeah.
And as Robert told you, he's the one who planted them. Didn't Henry Humphreys help work with you on this deal?
I think so, to the best of my memory. Of course, Henry, you know, was a little allergic to work, and he never did do too much of it.
You all got a quarter for planting the trees.
Yeah, got 25 cents a piece, and the ones in front of the house, the only ones that grew that high. And when, as Thomas said a minute ago, when Papa brought them back from a nursery between Jacksonville and Lake City, he brought them in the trunk of his car.
So you bought them in Lake City?
Somewhere over there. I forgot. The band was in the legislature, I think, at one time. He's dead. I can't think of his name now.
I wonder if it was over at Monticello, that guy that...
No, it was the Jacksonville. It was a nursery that was operated by Duval County, the prison farm. And it was supervised by Ed Yarber. I believe it was Ed Yarber was his name. Ed was his first name. And he did live in the clinic. Somewhere around 31, 32, the house on the corner caught fire upstairs.
Yeah, I was going to ask you why it's shorter than it was
And in rebuilding it, Papa had them to cut it down to a story and a half. And at the time, Slim, I believe, was there with only 2 boys that were here. Robert had moved to...
I was living in Huntsville, Alabama.
You'd gone down Huntsville, Alabama, you and Miller, hadn't you?
Yeah, Miller was up there with us.
And the fire occurred sometime after midnight and woke Slim up. Slim had been out partying, and Slim turned over and went back to sleep. And then when the fire gained momentum and started getting worse, went looking for Slim and found him in bed, got him up, finally got him out of the house. And then early morning, when they had the fire under control and out, started looking around, we couldn't find Slim high or low. So the fire chief went all through the house, scared that Slim had got caught in there and got killed in the fire. And the assistant fire chief was C.P. Rudeshauser, who lived here in the Walsh house. C.P. had married a Walsh girl, and they were living over here. And Slim came over here and went to bed, went to sleep in C.P.'s bed while C.P. was across the street fighting the fire. And then it was in 1937 that Catherine and I were married, and at the time we got married, I was living in this house.
Well, let's walk down the street and look at these other 4 houses that they bought.
As I was telling you, Papa bought these 4 houses here, and the 4th house was this little gunshot house here, a real small house. And then one to the left, at which now Mrs. Butler is living there now. They've been living there for years. And in the greenhouse, at one time, Nancy and Clinton lived there. Matter of fact, they were living there when Nancy Ann was born. And then Papa and Mama and lived on the corner. My bedroom was upstairs. As you can see, the 2 windows are those cedar or arborvitae trees. And at the time they were planted, they were only about 18 inches tall. And now they're almost as tall as the house.
Didn't Sarah and Andrew live in this house also?
Yes, Sarah and Andrew lived in there.
I can remember that when Andy was little boy.
Matter of fact, I think they were living there when Andrew was in the service. Maybe.
Look at the size of those trees. Ooh.
But it's hard to believe that those palm trees were brought from Jacksonville in the trunk of a car as tall as they are now. And those trees are probably 80 feet tall.
At least.
I lived here until 1937 when Catherine and I were married. And the first place that Catherine and I lived, we rented a room from Mrs. Hobein at 119 North 4th Street, where Dorothy Humphreys is now living. And we stayed there for several weeks. And after I'd been married for just 30 days, I had an acute attack of appendicitis and spent 10 days in the St. Vincent's Hospital. And when I was recovering, why, Catherine and I stayed over at Papa and Mama's house. And 38, we built out on North 18th Street, which we will go take a look at.
Okay.
This is your mother and I's first home. And matter of fact, this is where you and Deanna were born.
Deanna was born here. I was born in Jacksonville.
That's right, St. Vincent's. Papa gave us the lot. He opened up a subdivision out here, and he gave Catherine and I the lot. And the contractor that built it was Mark Hyde. It's a 2-bedroom house, a living room, a full dining room, a kitchen, and a glassed-in sun porch with all hardwood floors. And it had a circulating fireplace heater in it. And that house was built for $3,200. $3,200 included the cost of the house and the closing cost. It was financed through FHA. And we lived here until 1944, at which time I was drafted going to the Air Force, Army Air Force. And then we moved to town because at that time there was no paved roads out here and very few houses out here. Matter of fact, there wasn't but 2 or 3 houses out here, and at that time this was really out in the country.
Well, I can remember this was a ditch across here, and this was woods on this side of the house.
Right.
There were no houses over here at all. And this was a Oyster Shell Road.
And I was scared for your mother and you and Deanna to be way out here, because at the time the only transportation we had was the truck that I was using in the grocery store. So from here we sold this place and bought the house on South 6th Street next to the First Presbyterian Church that we were shooting at.
I can remember the Bennett's used to live here. Mr. Fischler still lives here. Mrs. Stone still lives here, and she was here when I was a little boy. And Nancy and Clinton lived in this house in the corner now.
And that was all that was out here on this street. This is North 18th and Elijah Way. Well, let's take a run down to North 6th Street where we moved from here.
Okay, we'll go now.
Our historical documentary was brought to you by Coast Soap.
I have felt so dead until I used Coast. I am so glad because I have come alive with Coast. I am so glad of that because I was so bored just laying in that coffin without anything to do. So I have really come alive thanks to Coast. Thank you. Bye.
Soaps, because you never know who you're going to wind up face to face with someone.
It is August the 11th, the day after Tom Jr.'s 45th birthday. And we are now showing this house in the background is a little house that we moved into in early 1944 after I was drafted to go in the military service. We bought this house from the Rudeshauser estate for $1,200. And Catherine, Tom Jr., and Deanna stayed there, lived there for while I was in the military service in the Army Air Force. And returning home after doing 2 years with the Air Force, Army Air Force, we sold this house. I forget now what we sold it for and how much we received for it. And this is the house that while I was in the service, that the Navy bombed one morning, and fortunately Tom Jr. had got up early that morning and left and went over to his grandmother, Granddaddy Hardy, which is just right through the back lot. At that time, it was a vacant lot back of the First Presbyterian Church, and all he had to do was walk right through the lot and went over and having breakfast with them. And shortly after, I was coming home the next day, and Catherine had been in the bathroom and washed her hair and cleaning up, and all of a sudden she saw smoke everywhere. And what it was, the Navy was practicing, target practicing, and it was an overcast day, and the planes started shooting downtown, and then by the post office, and on over our house, and it went right through Tom Jr.'s bed, and it, of course, feathers from the pillar and everything, and then the dust from all of the plaster on the walls, could hardly see. And Catherine grabbed Deanna, and they ran out, and she called the Methodist preacher who lived right across the street here, which later on that the Methodist parsonage was moved from here, and the Sunday school building was built here. Matter of fact, they tore down 2 homes here. Mrs. Tom Davis's home. And when getting ready to go to the service, when I moved in, we were working in the backyard, and I had a colored fellow there. And Tom Jr. at that time was 5 years old. And this colored fellow was down planting or cleaning out around some shrubbery in the backyard. Tom took an axe handle and hit him right in the back of the head. So, returning from the military service in 46, somewhere around the first of the year, we came back, and I went back into the grocery store business on the corner of 6th and Ash. Well, needing some money, we sold this house, and I still don't recall what we received for it. And returning from the Army Air Force discharge in 46, I think sometime in February, returned, and as I said before, we sold this house and moved down the street south of here, a block and a half, and rented a little home from Mrs. P.R. Brady, an old citizen of Fernandina Beach, and opened the grocery store across the street. And at that time, Papa was living on the corner of Atlantic Avenue and 6th Street. And he sold that house, he sold that piece of property to Setzer's Grocery Company. And from here, we will go down there, and I'll show you, we'll run a picture of the house that he moved across the street. On the corner of Atlantic and 6th, now we're standing on South 6th Street, and you'll see that's where Papa lived. And he sold that corner lot and house to Setzer's Grocery Company in Jacksonville. If I'm not mistaken, it was $12,500, and that was in 48, the first of the last part of 48. And Mr. Setzer gave Papa the house that was on the lot, and Papa moved it across the street, and it cost him $1,200 to have this house moved over here. And then he sold it. Later on, he sold it to I forgot who it was. But
Mr.
originally this was the,
Mr. Ketchum?
yeah, it's Mr. Ketchum he sold it to. And originally this house was built by Mr. Lohman, who was with the city of Fernandina. And I'd like to call your attention to all of the gingerbread work on it. And this house is way over 100 years old. I would say that it was built, this house should run about 104 to 110 years old. In the first part of 1947, as I told you, we sold our home on North 6th Street when I returned from the Army Air Force. And we rented this little house from Mrs. P.R. Brady. And we lived there for about 6 months at $50 a month. And the grocery store that I reopened is now occupied by the Amelia Paint Company on the corner there of 6th and Ash. And we were living here in this little house when Casey was born. And while we were living there, I built the house across the street. I bought the lot from Mr. Wolf and paid $750 for that lot. And then Papa tore down a building that was located on the corner of 4th and Ash Street. And the lot was only 50 by 100, and it was real difficult to come up with a good plan for it. One morning, Catherine got up real early in the morning, about 5 o'clock. I think she must have dreamed of a floor plan, and she drew the plans for the house. It has 3 bedrooms in it, 10 closets, living room, dining room, kitchen, and 3 bedrooms. From the front, you'd never dream that that house had that much room in it. And we had a garage in the back, 1.5 garage. In the half part of the garage, we had the washer mat, dryer and washer, and also an old wooden cook stove that Dr. Dickens' mother gave me. And it took about 8 people to carry it out of the Dr. Dickens' house, and we set it up in there in the garage, and we used to use it quite frequently, entertaining. And we had a hurricane one, I forgot what year it was, probably in 48, and all the power was out. So I got up real early that morning and built a fire in the old wood cook stove and started frying eggs and ham. And neighbors all around come running with a skillet and some eggs and bacon and so forth. And another favorite thing that we cooked on there was biscuits. And we used to have a lot of arguments about that food tastes better cooked on a wooden stove than an iron pot. And Nancy, oldest sister, she never would agree with us, but her husband Clinton, he stood by and swore that anything that was cooked on a wooden stove, regardless of what it was, it had a far better taste. When building this house over there, Papa, as we told you before, had moved his house from the corner up there. And Granddaddy Hardy was sick, and he stayed with us over there for 5 or 6 months, and they had him on a special diet. And Kevin had to fix him salt-free food. And when I had at that time I had the grocery store across the street, and her daddy'd come over there and slipped back there and asked the butcher to give him a wiener, a hot dog. And I told her about it, and of course she blew her top. When I came back, I started letting people have credit. and I wound up behind the 8 ball and went broke. In the first part of December, I closed the store and went back into the sign business. And the first thing that I did was I borrowed a little saber saw from Frank Mayer. At that time, the saber saw was not manufactured in the United States. Frank Mayer, a general contractor, had bought this saber saw in Germany. And back then, the blades were $2 a piece because they had to get them from Germany. And the comparable grade today, even at the inflated market here in '84, saw blade only sells for about 50 cents. Sometimes you catch them on sale for 3 for $1. And I started cutting up gondolas and any wood material that I had, making Christmas displays. And 34 years later, several people still have one of the full-size Santa Claus that I cut out and sold. And of course, we were quite disturbed. We had 3 children that believed in Santa Claus, and going broke. We were fearful of being able to give our children the Christmas presents that we'd wanted to, and but I guess it turned out really one of the best Christmases that we ever had. And back to the little house on the corner, I mentioned that Casey was born here in Fernandina, and when we were living there, and she was born on Mother's Day. And that morning, Tom and Deanna, myself, got up about 5 o'clock in the morning and was waiting to hear from the hospital when the store could brought Casey around. And I built Tom a little magic table, a table that magicians use, which he got a great big kick out of. And then we started up to the hospital and met Dr. Bailey Dickens. As I remember, is right up here on about at the corner of Ash and 8. And he stopped us and told us that we had a little girl. And we went on to the hospital and took Catherine some flowers. And of course, we were real glad that both of them were getting along just fine. Where the Amelia Paint Store is located now is owned and operated by Ralph and Mary Palmasano. This is where that I had my grocery store when I returned from the military service, the Army Air Force, and was there from 47 to either December the 1st of 1950 or 51. And at that time, we had the second largest store in town. And where I made my mistake was selling on credit. We had poke boats here then. And when I came back and opened that store, I came back with a couple of $1,000, and I opened up with an inventory and fixtures of $25,000. And then I started selling these poke boats, and they had to sell them on credit. They paid once every 2 weeks. And I had about 10 boats, and their bill was running $150, $200 per week. And first thing you know, I had $16,000 on the book from these poke boats, and they were slow paying. And of course, then my creditors started closing in on me. And that put an end to the grocery business. And while I was in the grocery business, Catherine's mother passed away. And in 1951 or 52, we all moved around to 415 Alachaway to Catherine's daddy to live with him, because N.A. and Lentine had been living there, but they moved to Brownsville, Texas. So we run around there to take care of